Hello and welcome to the Metapod, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. The final week in the bag. Sean and I have been troubleshooting for about an hour, just trying to get everything rocking and working, and just this is the final episode until everything is back to normal. But I hope everybody's having a good week, good day, excited for a new week, especially because it's the week of the North American International Championships. Sean, how are you?
I am good, Jake. Yeah, like Jake said, a little bit of troubleshooting. But you know what? You, the viewer and the listener, will never know.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
I will say we figured out that AirPod audio is terrible. Just terrible. Oh, did I lose you again, Jake? Are you there? No.
I am here.
Oh, okay. You froze on my screen. Okay. Anyways.
It's just the house. It's the parents' house.
That's fair. You know what, Jake? Let's get straight into it. Let's get straight into it. We got a lot of things.
Let's just go right into it.
We got NAIC, we got some news, and we got the review. Jake, rock and roll.
We've got the 5-star review here. This is from Dragoon Gamer. It's titled as The Best Podcast. So thank you very much for the kind words. You can leave your review yourself over on Apple iTunes if you want to leave a review. You can also leave a YouTube comment if you'd like on the YouTube video. And on Spotify, you can give a rating to let us know how we're doing. You know, we're always trying to improve. This review says, I love your podcast. It's very helpful and keeps me up with the meta. And you've helped me build a deck. It's based around Scarlet and Violet's base set, Blissey and Armorage. Armorage is the Pokemon that moves the energy back. I think it's fire energy to the active, and that's it.
It's something like that. It's very strange.
It messes around with fire energy on the board. But anyways, you help me stay up to date on the meta and what it is. So thank you and keep up the good work. P.S. Shout out to episode 130, the budget-friendly decks. Yeah, which is definitely a topic that we got to go back to in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Like you said in the first version of this recording, we have to let Paldea Evolved marinate. I loved that phrasing, so I wanted to bring it back.
Well, I mean, Paldea Evolved just came out. We're about to hit our second tournament because we've already had one tournament that we're going to talk about here on the podcast to give you a little bit of a preview. But, Sean, that will come in the future, so stay tuned for that on the podcast. But first, what do we have first to talk about, Sean?
First thing on the agenda is a new set name was trademarked in Japan, and that set name is very confusing for non-Japanese players, specifically ones that speak English, because the set name is called Battle Academy. Jake, why would this be confusing for people?
If you don't remember, I think it was like a year, maybe like 2 years ago, Pokemon released this Pokemon TCG product called Battle Academy. I think it won like an award.
It did.
Of some sort, like board game award, for being like incredible for new players and things like that. And it's meant for like young kids and just new players in general on like learning how to play the game and stuff. Very, very cool resource if you're looking out for that. But as Sean said, they've got the same name, so please don't confuse the two. This is a completely different, separate item that is referencing the Indigo disc, which, if you do not know, is the second part of the Scarlet and Violet DLC that will be releasing winter of this year. That DLC, I think, was announced last week. It was either before or after our last podcast. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they
around that time.
Yeah, they announced it at like one of the last Pokemon Presents or something like that, or Nintendo Direct.
Nintendo Direct it was, yeah. I remember watching it with a lot of other things. But, I mean, in there, you're going to be a part of, like, an exchange student. You're going to be an exchange student if you're familiar with the video game. So that is why it's labeled Battle Academy. That's kind of the reasoning because, you know, you're in school, you're battling, you're learning and stuff like that. So huge emphasis on battling in there. And that is going to be a set that we don't see for a long time. Pokemon always makes these trademarks well in advance, so this could release like early 2024.
Yeah, it's going to be for us probably maybe our February set, maybe even later, depending. But yeah, I think this will be like our year of gimmicks, kind of like Battle Styles' year was.
Battle Styles, Chilling Reign.
Yep.
Fusion Strike.
Yeah, like, so many great things like Mew VMAX. So we have
Mew VMAX coming up. Oh
yeah,
joy. The
new
deck
Mew
that just
VMAX.
never dies.
Oh, it's we'll get into that for the metagame. It's insane though. It really is. I don't understand it, Jake.
It'll
Um
be curious to see how it continues forward until it rotates, but there are plenty of Japanese products that are coming in the future before that, so make sure to go check those out. PokeBeach has an article when you look at the Battle Academy that lists everything out for like the rest of the calendar year if you're interested in buying Japanese products like the Pokemon trading card game classic box set in late October, which has got like the really cool board to
yep.
play on. Do you remember that, Sean?
Yeah, yeah. I think
I'm
it
definitely getting that.
Oh, okay. Big
I'm
spender.
just always going to talk about it because I wanted so bad. It looks so cool.
Yeah. Uh but yeah, like I think the next thing for us on the news front before we get into NAIC stuff is there's sort of a new product coming out. We talked about Battle Academy, and this is like
Mhm.
Battle Academy Junior kind of
It
thing.
really is.
It's called My First Battle, and it's interesting. It is a 17 card deck, and it comes with what it looks like a paper playmat type thing, and all the counters that you need to keep track of damage. But it's basically a learning experience for, I guess, very young children to get
Hmm.
into playing any TCG, honestly. Like, I can't imagine any other TCG being approachable at a younger age.
I mean, I've heard Pokemon is one of the easier ones to learn.
Yeah. Look, it comes in the same style of packaging as a lot of the League battle decks did, and it has
Hmm.
the like level. It's a level 1 deck, Jake. Can you believe it? It's the same as the new Chen Pao deck.
So does it come with one EX?
I
I think
assume.
so. Looking at that, I think the top one for anybody who's also looking at the news as we look at the news and talk about it, I think that's like a Bellable, maybe?
It
I
is
don't
so
know.
hard. It is so hard to see it on the tiny pictures here.
It's very pixelated. It's not very high quality because all we have is just preliminary information about this
Mhm.
product. So this is very, very new. Like this just dropped yesterday at the time of this recording. So Monday, June 26th. So we'll get more information, more product images, things like that later. This is set to be released at the end of September, September 29th, 2023. So you can get this ready to put in your holiday packages, things like that, for other people or something to get into, after school starts. It'd be cool. This would be interesting as like after school program stuff.
Mhm.
If like you're a if you're like a teacher and you need like something, engaging or and something basic, Pokemon is super popular. So I don't know how teaching like the administration would feel about Pokemon because I know Pokemon cards, the story of kids like our age, Sean,
Yeah.
Pokemon cards got banned in school.
They did.
Um,
They
so
did.
I don't know if that plays an influence, but if you're thinking of something creative, that could be something cool.
Now,
Um,
Jake, I'm gonna say right now, if somebody pulls one of these out, I'm gonna pull out like a Mew VMAX deck and absolutely stomp these kids. That's
but Sean, you have to make it 17 cards though. Can you
you.
make Mew VMAX 17 cards?
I'm sure. I don't know about Mew VMAX, but I'm sure I can make something 17 cards. Just,
You
just.
have like what is it like Cura?
I'm
You
gonna
just have
build.
like one Curum line
Yeah.
and just like 15 energies.
Or Jake, I'm just gonna build I'm gonna build a 17 card. Oh, what was I thinking? Wug trio deck and just mill them out in
One
one turn. I'm terrible.
you
I
you
just
do that with like resource management at Rangaroo.
right. just
You
like
just win.
the kids are like, wait, but you're supposed to take prizes, and I'm like, yeah, you didn't read the other side of the rules pamphlet. I just milled you.
There's another win condition. Man, that
Oh,
would you're evil. Anyways, on to less evil things,
yep.
debatably, in the Pokemon trading card game. We're gonna get into now the metagame. So, as we mentioned, The North American International Championships will be going on this weekend in Columbus, Ohio. I will be there, so just because I'm probably going to say it like 30 times before and during the event, I will be there. I will be present at the North American International Championships. I'll be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'll be there. So if you see me during any of those times, so long as I'm not like, I mean, if I'm like 11-1, right, on the day,
Don't talk to
don't
me.
try to yeah, just let me be in the zone. But with that North American International Championships are going on, especially like Saturday and Sunday, like if I go like 0-9, right, I lose all 9 of my games and I don't make day 2, like, come find me, hang out, talk to me if you wanna play with our NAIC decks or, like, a standard deck, or if you have multiple GLC decks. I know, Hollerman, someone who listens to the Metapod and is someone that I've met outside of, out in the outside world, IRL, as they say. I've met more times than Sean. Um,
Yeah. Which are technically
they,
is zero somehow still.
yeah,
Wild.
they said that they have some GLC decks that they'll let me borrow and we can play, different formats and things like that. So if you want to do that, feel free. If you just want to say hi, that also works. I've got some Darkness Ablaze Rowlet cards because I have like 400, 500 of them. If you want to take one, maybe like me sign it or something like that, feel free. I'll have plenty available. But I'm excited, but I'm also excited for the decks that are coming in the tournament, Sean.
Yeah. I think one of the decks that Jake sent me was Aiden Koos. Is that how I'd pronounce it?
I think that's how you say it. So Aiden won a regional this past
Or he got
season,
yeah, yeah.
and we're gonna be taking deck lists, primarily information from the Paldea Vault format. Puerto Rico had a special event this past weekend, and we're also going to talk about some Korean League as well in this. That's in the same format. But Aiden placed second place with Lost Box Kyogre. So if there's one thing that I can tell you, if Sean, because I can't see the screen,
Yeah.
if you go to the
Is
official
this
standings, if you go to the standings from the event, there were in the top 8, there were 4 Lost Box decks. 4 of the top 5 decks that resulted in this event are Lost Box. And then there's Gardevoirs in there as well, 2 Gardevoirs, 1 Arceus Duraludon Umbreon. I think
Yep.
it may 2 of them potentially. There's 2 Arceus decks. I don't know exactly what the builds are of those because it's hard to get the information from this
Yeah.
SPE. We don't have it all, but if there's one thing that you got to know is there's 2 giants in this format.
Yep.
There is Lost Box and there is Gardevoir, and those are going to be the 2 dominant decks. Those are going to be the 2 most popular decks, and those are ones that you should expect to see if you're playing all 9 rounds of day 1, regardless if you go 09 or 9-0. If you're playing an NAIC or even a local league or anything like that, you should expect like 2/3 of your matches to be against either Lost Box or Gardevoir, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But going back to the second place list that Aiden had, Aiden was playing Turbo Lost Box. I think the community is kind of deciding right now that Turbo Lost Box is one of the better builds of Lost Box. And when I say turbo, I'm talking like the Raikou with the Dragonite. But this one is even spicier, Sean, because usually with that, we've seen like the Kyogre, right?
Hmm.
Dragonite, Raikou, and it's 3 types of basic energies. This one has 4 because guess who it has in this list, Sean?
We have the Metapod fan favorite, Aerodactyl V-Stall.
Aerodactyl V-Star.
Yeah.
Aerodactyl V-Star is present in Aiden's version of the Lost Box list. And I actually really, really like this. I think this is very, very cool because especially with different matchups. I mean, we've talked about in the past when Aerodactyl V-Star first came up, being able to stop certain things, right? When the Aerodactyl is in play, Pokemon just don't have like
They don't have
you can stop a
abilities.
lot of Pokemon. Yeah, they don't have abilities. You can start whacking away at things like Gardevoir. Like Gardevoir can't do anything in terms of accelerating or getting through their deck. Lugia can't put down their Archeops, Fusion Strike Mew. Mew VMAX can't do any ability draw. And so you stop so many different decks in the format. Lost Box decks, you stop them from doing, Lost Box things for the most part.
Yeah.
And so the Aerodactyl can do a ton of damage in there. And this list again, super heavy on the Comfey and Colress experiment, as you would normally expect for a Lost Box build. It's got the Cramorant, it's got two Sableye. Two Sableye is usually the most popular variant of Lost Box builds that I have seen in terms of the last week or two of this format being played around. You're playing 4 Mirage Gate, 4 Battle VIP Pass, 4 Switch Card, 3 Escape Rope. Like 4 Switch Card and 3 Escape Rope is also what I'm seeing is the like standard ideal switching options. You don't see a lot of these decks usually playing switches because most of the time, I mean, I know Aiden's Aerodactyl is a little bit of an exception, but you don't see non-basic Pokemon. Remember, because Switch
Hmm.
Card only works for basic Pokemon.
Yeah. So like the Aerodactyl V Star is a little awkward with that because like it isn't a basic.
Mhm.
It's the only non-basic in your deck. So like,
But it's one of those
but
things that if you're using Aerodactyl V-Star and you do use that V-Star power, you've probably like won the game.
you might, yeah, yeah. Like
You're
it's
probably I mean, you're only putting it in a position to where like I'm using this because if I use this, I pretty much win.
yeah. It's I'm trying to think of like the decks that would actually do well against Aerodactyl V Star that are in the format right now. I mean, part of me wants to quickly look up what Aerodactyl. What does Aerodactyl V Star's ability actually say word for word, Jake?
Well, it's not an ability, remember, Sean. It's
Or
an attack that
it's an attack
acts as
that
like
gives you an ability.
yes, and it's an attack that gives you an ability. So it says, Ancient Star. Until this Pokemon leaves play, it gains an ability that has the effect your opponent's Pokemon V in play, except any Aerodactyl V Star, have no abilities.
So this
So
actually does
Lost Box,
not
I
hurt.
mean, can still
It doesn't
what?
hurt Gardevoir either, because Gardevoir is an EX.
Well, it hurts like the Zacian at least.
I suppose. Yeah, it's. I feel like it's really good against Lugia. I will grant you that. And
Really good against Lugia, really good against Mew.
yes,
Also
good against
really
that.
good against potentially Chin Pao as well, because the thing with Chin Pao, if you just constantly knock out the Baxcaliburs, for example,
Mm,
when you do that, when you knock out a Baxcalibur, Chin Pao, we won't really show a list, but I highly recommend if you're going to play Chin Pao to have a 1-1 line of Palkia V Star because it's very, very good. Because if somebody knocks out your Baxcalibur, you're like, okay, how do I get all the energies on board to utilize Chin Pao's attack? Discarding more energies equals more damage. One thing that people are doing is they're using the 1-1 Palkia V Star line to use Star Portal V Star to accelerate energies, enough energies on a Chin Pao
yeah.
to give you a turn of like, getting the Frigibax, I believe the Pokemon's called, putting it on the bench and setting yourself up for a next turn Bax Caliber to get yourself back online and consistent. So
Yeah.
that can stop Chin Pao if you just like boss and you KO the Bax Caliber while you have Ancient Star the ability going on, then that could be a huge, huge, huge help in winning that matchup as well.
So obviously, like Lost Box going to be huge. The
Mhm.
other half of that equation, which I'll pull up now, is Juan Andre's list from a League Cup win. Congrats, by the way, to Juan. But yeah, like is Gardevoir, right?
Yes,
And
this is pretty much like the standard list that I've been seeing of Gardevoir. Like if I told Sean, okay, make a 60 card deck right now of Gardevoir without looking anything up online, this is probably what Sean would make, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, it's super consistent. You're running the Radiant Greninja for that draw rather than any other Radiant. You're running the one thing I'll say is interesting here because
Hmm.
you might see more Arceus V-Star Duraludon running the Alolan Vulpix again.
Hmm.
Um, and the point that I bring up why that's interesting is all of your Pokemon, except for Cresselia, basically, or the memory skip Ralts, have abilities. Now, you could try to memory skip, right? Which might work, but I've always personally felt like that's such a risk because it's like, okay, they took a turn off. If they have any sort of switching option, then it doesn't
Especially
matter.
because Arceus, Duraludon, Vulpix, or whatever, usually they do play switches because a lot of
Yeah.
times they'll start the Duraludon or a different Pokemon and they switch into the Arceus. So,
So like to me, like I it's a bit risky. So I'm still surprised that nobody is running the what is it? Is it
Spiritomb.
Mimikyu? The Mimikyu
Spiritomb.
EX. Oh, Spiritomb. Does Spiritomb
I
also?
think Spiritomb is actually better because I mean Mimikyu is an option, but Spiritomb, a one prizer in comparison, I think this is really cool. So a lot of people have been playing a Spiritomb, and I personally recommend putting a Spiritomb in your list. I think Spiritomb can fit in a lot of lists, like Lost Box. I think it can fit in Gardevoir. I think it can fit in a lot. It says that basic Pokemon V don't have abilities. So when Alolan Vulpix uses its attack, right, and says basic Pokemon with abilities can't hit it, you can put down your Spiritomb after you've got your
Oh.
energy on the Zacian, and it turns off Zacian's ability. Therefore, Zacian can attack the Alolan Vulpix. So I think Spiritomb's a really, really good option if you're looking at this list that we're presenting and you're like, okay, maybe I'm worried about the Alolan Vulpix or something like that.
Mhm.
Or maybe you just, you want to take out a card. I don't know which card you take out in this list, but you're like maybe the worker. You want to take out the worker or something like that, or a research, or I don't know. I don't even know if those would be good options. But if you want a 61st card in your list, I think Spiritomb is the number one option, the one that's currently banned on PTCG Live.
Maybe that's why nobody's playing it in their list because you can't test it. So
There will be this isn't part of our news, but I guess I can mention it real quick. There will be an update on the 29th, so on Thursday. So RIP if you're trying to test like on the dawn of the final day on Thursday, but on Thursday there's going to be an update for Pokemon TCG Live, and it's supposed to fix like the Penny, Spiritomb, Tinglu, like all that stuff that we talked about the other week. So,
I want to
but
say I'm seeing here, by the way,
mhm.
Celio's network, Luke, this list, and I just want to point this out as a Gardevoir list because it is quite interesting, Jake. I
Are
just
you
saw it
looking
off the
at
side.
Mr. Darth Bean?
Yes, Justin Bean has a
Mhm.
list. And I'll need you to pull up exactly what this Espeon VMAX does because his list is playing the Spiritomb, which, you hit the nail on the head there.
Mhm.
Um, and it is playing two reversal energies instead of one, but the Espeon VMAX is I've never seen that in a Guardia
So
list.
I think a lot of people have also been talking about a 1-1 line of Espeon, Espeon VMAX, and Espeon VMAX has a little bit of a different counter, I feel like,
Mhm.
than the Spiritomb because this has an ability that says prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to all your Pokemon that have energy attached. So one of the counters, I think this was a while ago that we talked about this on the Metapod, because I think this was introduced in like Arceus decks,
Mhm.
like Arceus Duraludon. This is a counter for something like Sableye, right? In Sableye Lost Box, because Sableye placing the damage counters is an effect of an attack. So any Pokemon that you have, any Curlias or Cresselia or anything that have an energy attached that you can use through the Max Miracle, or not Max Miracle, the Gardevoir EX's ability, right? Accelerate energies on those psychic Pokemon. You can negate that Sableye's attack pretty much effectively. And then Max Mindstorm does 60 damage for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon, which there's a lot of energy flying around this format. you could do some good damage, and especially if you're facing Lost Box, like, there's not very many energies on the field, like, 1
Yeah.
energy attachment and maybe, like, 1 other somewhere that you could potentially trap, like, that's 120, that knocks out a Sableye.
Yeah, and it's such a beefy Pokemon in the active, like, they're gonna have a
Mhm.
hard time knocking it out. It's gonna take them a couple turns.
You do have to be wary though, because it is weak to dark. So
Mm,
we looked at Aiden Kusa's list,
yeah.
like, for example, for Aiden's playing a Drapion. And so one thing that is interesting in Drapion in Lost Box lists is they have Mirage Gate. So like they can you're like, oh, Drapion, wild style, you still have to do 4 energies. That could be done with a Mirage Gate or two.
Yeah, that's very
So
fair.
make sure to plan accordingly. Make sure, especially, if you're playing Gardevoir and you're playing that 1/1 Espeon line, and you just kind of like want to wall Lost Box decks, be wary of Drapion. Make sure to do counts of like, okay, where is the Drapion? They're usually probably just playing 1 Drapion, I would bet. How many Mirage Gates have they used? Where are the energies? Things like that. Um, so just be wary of that. How many Super Rods have they used?
Interesting. Let's see here. We have a list from where was this from?
This
Uh,
are you talking about Sejun Parks?
yes, Seijun Park's list.
So
Yes, yes.
Sejun Park, this is the coolest thing in my opinion, because for anyone who's maybe heard that name before, they're like, "Oh, that name's kind of familiar." Sejun Park actually won the 2014 World Championships in the video game with Pachirisu. If you
Oh,
haven't heard of that or seen that before, I recommend, like, if you're just a Pokemon competitive fan, go look up like there's like mini video essays and stuff like that about that championships. Actually, very very cool. Daejun Park actually won Korean League. Um, there were plenty of like Korean leagues around over the weekend. Some of them were streamed and things like that. Very, very cool. It was in the Paldea Vault format. So I think this list is interesting because I know there are probably a lot of Maridon fans that listen to the podcast and things like that. So Sejun won his Korean Champions League with Maridon. And if you look at the matchups in the response, Sean, he went like a perfect record. I mean, I know he ID'd round
interesting.
7 and 8, but he literally did not lose. And look at all the Gardevoir he faced. He faced Gardevoir in round 1, round 3, round 4, round 5, round 6, in top 8. He played against 6 Gardevoir decks, and he beat all of them, right? He was a perfect 6-0 against Gardevoir, and he didn't really face a lot of Lost Box, so we'll see. I don't know how
Yeah.
that matchup really goes, but he beat Lost Zone Tina and Lost Zone Gudra Hisui and V-Star. So, that's like half the battle in Lost Zone lists. So, very, very interesting and very, very cool, in my opinion, to see the Miraidon. But this Miraidon is not 100% like we would usually see it, Sean.
Yeah. I mean, it's running the Flaffy engine, which is
Yes,
one
running
thing.
the Flaffy, which is good to note, but it also disregards the Regieleki
Yeah.
VMAX overall.
Yeah.
Don't worry
Instead,
about the extra damage, the 3 prizers.
yeah, I think instead it's basically just like I'm gonna run fast. I'm gonna run the Miraidon. I'm gonna run 2 Raikou and 2
Mhm,
Raichu V.
mhm.
It's also got one copy of Flying Pikachu V, but no VMAX in this one. Which I think does the Flying Pikachu V have an attack that's paralyzes or something on its base
It
form?
is flip a coin. If tails, this attack does nothing. If heads, during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage from and effects of attacks done to this Pokemon. That's the second one,
Interesting.
Fly, which costs 3 energies and does 120 damage. But the first attack says flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. Maybe either of them can be useful situationally if you're feeling
Hmm.
lucky. And then they have a one of Zapdos, and I think this the Pokemon Go Zapdos?
Yes, it's the Pokemon Go Zapdos that makes your, I think it's basic lightning Pokemon do 10 more damage.
Okay, so maybe
So
that's
you can
relevant.
actually hit on fly 130. right? Which
Yeah.
is actually a pretty relevant number for a lot of things. Like, well, Radiant Greninja is weak to lightning, but I know there are some 130 Pokemon running around that you could be able to do. But there are also different tech options in here as well. There's a Manaphy to help out and help your bench. There's a Luminion in here to help get you a supporter for turn. There's the Drapion, which we already talked about, but one that we haven't talked about yet, which is one of the better cards that have come out of Paldea Evolved, is Squawkabilly EX. Sean, do you remember what Squawkabilly EX
Oh,
does?
oh, I know. You can only use its ability on your first turn, so
Hmm.
use it or lose it. And the idea is that once during your turn, when it's on the field, you can choose to discard your hand and draw six. It's a really interesting card. If any of you are familiar with older sets like Dedenne GX,
Hmm.
it's like the Dene GX, except you don't have to use the ability when it comes into play. You can just put the Squawkabilly down, do more of your turn, and decide when you're going to use it on that first turn. Downside, obviously, is that if you don't get it on that first turn, it's a dead card in your deck. But hey, people play 4 battle VIP pass.
Exactly, Sean. And so it's a really good card. Some lists are including it for those that want that consistency, that really just they have that necessity to put down, at least one Flaffy in the turn, to put down a full bench of Pokemon for Raikou. Um, there's a
Yeah,
lot of different options in there. This list also, like a lot of other lists, they're playing the four electric thing. The elect. What's the card
electric
called? They make
generator.
fun of Ethan Heggie all the time
Electric
on the
generator.
official streams. Electric generator.
Yeah.
There's four of those. Four Ultra Balls, two Nest Balls, some Switch cards, Research, Iono, Judge, Boss, also to Arvin, right? And Arvin not only gets you an item card, but it also gets you a tool card. Remember that tool cards are their own specific category now. They're separate from item cards. So don't try to Irida for a tool card. I
Yeah.
don't believe that works anymore. But if you'd like to use Arvin, there are a couple tool options available in this list specifically. The Forest Sealstone, a very, very good card. Remember, gives you a V-Star power on a basic Pokemon V to grab any card you want. Very, very good. We've seen it in a ton of decks so far since Scarlet and Violet base set came out, I believe. It's been super popular.
Yeah. Um,
And then it also has Bravery Charm, which gives your basic Pokemon 50 plus XP. And so with a bunch of basic Pokemon attackers, Miraidon, Raikou, Raichu, Flying Pikachu, Drapion, there's a plenty of different options to put this on.
Indeed. I'm trying to think of what else. There's a couple of other lists we want to go over.
There's
Um,
I just have really one
yeah. What's
potentially.
that
I don't
list?
know
What's
if
that
you have
list, Jake?
another one that you want. The list that we've got is Arceus, Duraludon, Umbreon. I've seen some people talk about how this may be like one of the sleeper picks per se, like not a bad option. And we've kind of talked about it before. Because
Yep.
I believe I think it was early in the Scarlet Violet base set format, this became prevalent,
I
and this
I played
started
against
popping
it.
up.
I mean, I played against it when I was in Hartford. My first round
Oh yeah,
against Zach Lesage. He played a similar list. So
and so this is
certainly.
one, especially with Paldea Evolved, I think is going to be primarily utilized. Heavy emphasis on the lost cities, right? Especially with Arceus Duraludon, your Duraludon's probably not going to get it knocked out first turn, probably. Um, And so you're going to be using that to knock out different options and putting them in the lost zone, primarily things like lost box pieces, right? Gardevoir pieces could be essential in that as well because of the Zacians, right? Zacians hitting for infinite damage, hitting for big, big damage are the most likely knockout for your Duraludon VMAX. So being able to use that, you're going to play four of those to try to get things in there. You've got Iono in there. One thing that's really cool, actually, that I want to go back to the Lost City. There are
Mhm.
some Lost Box lists and some other lists in general that play. I think Mew VMAX does as well. That could play an echoing horn. And
Mm,
so if you have Arceus Duraludon, right, and you have an Arceus get knocked out, right, from the Mew or whatever, what a lot of them will do is they'll just start taking away the two prizers, right?
yep.
With Lost City, if your Arceus gets knocked out, it gets put in the lost zone. It doesn't get put in the discard pile, so they can't Echoing Hornet. So
Yeah.
kind of like a, it helps you in more ways than one than the in the obvious or not in an obvious way. So very cool note that I wanted to point out.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about these lists is like, look, you're not going to take big one-hit KOs, but to your point, you're going to do your best to deny your opponent prizes easily cuz,
Hmm.
Arceus is pretty big, 280. Duraludon is enormous at 330 and Umbreon is pretty big as well at 310. And if you plan out your turns correctly, you're also playing two Judge and two Iono in the list, which means that like you're going to be disrupting your opponent's hand a lot. You don't need to worry so much about boss because you have the Umbreon. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, like if late in the game you say your opponent knocks out an Arceus V Star and then they knock out a Duraludon VMAX, that's five prizes. Well, so long as you don't put down your Radiant Alakazam, you can Iono them down to one and force them through a giant three prizer all at the same time. Which,
Exactly. And I mean, especially with the Duraludon VMAX as well, like you're hitting 220 every single turn.
yep,
There's a ton of damage that's being put out. I mean, Umbreon hits 160 as well. Arceus hits either 200, 180. And this is all without the effect of a choice belt, right?
yeah,
There is a choice belt in this list specifically that you can utilize to add more damage. Duraludon hitting 250, Umbreon hitting 190 base, and then Arceus hitting that 210 probably or 230. So there's a lot of different interesting stuff, and honestly, not a lot of people probably are wanting to respect the Arceus Duraludon Umbreon list because there's bigger giants in the format to worry about, right? And so they may be able to willingly take that loss. So this could kind of be, in my opinion, one of the sleeper picks of the format.
yeah. I mean, Jake, I guess we can get into now since we've gone over, I think, the list that like we really wanted to. Like,
Hmm.
what are so we've mentioned Lost Box and Gardevoir being like that's the top of the pyramid,
Hmm.
um, which I think also means be prepared for long three-game sets. If you're going
Yes.
to, so this is for you too, Jake. If you're going
Yes.
to NAIC, just be prepared that every round might take quite a long time.
There
So
is
yeah,
also there's a skill, and if you listen to
yeah,
like the Lake of Rages episode that released yesterday, you listen to I think Uncommon Energies episode that released earlier today, just any Pokemon podcast that is talking about NAIC, there are gonna be a lot of ties
yeah,
in the format, as Sean was saying. These games do not, especially Gardevoir and Lost Box, these games do not end quickly. There are so many game actions, so much shuffling that
yeah,
you have to take. And so, one of the biggest skills that you have to know and maybe have in the back of your mind if you're playing this weekend is when to scoop, right? In a best of three. So, game one, if you go down really quickly, like I'm talking like game one, three turns in, right? Three of your turns, and you only have two things in the loss zone, right? Two things at that point, you might just want to scoop it up and go into the next game because you're probably so far behind. You're probably already down two prizes at that point, maybe even a third, depending on what Pokemon you start. That, you know, you might as well just cut your losses and go to a game two because that could be the difference of like 10 to 15 minutes, right?
yeah,
Which is a long time in Pokemon. And so you want to have that time to your advantage. If it's game three, right? Obviously, don't.
yeah.
If it's game
Don't.
three, obviously don't scoop because it's the game that decides. And if you go down game one, right? If you go down game one and you lose, don't go down in game two. Game two, if you're also down, don't scoop early unless you want to go to
Yeah,
lunch early. Obviously, like if you haven't taken a loss yet in the best of three and you do not want to tie, or maybe this is another strategy. Maybe game one went a super long time because it was a super close game, right? And so maybe well, I'm trying to think. I don't
No,
even know.
I think your point is accurate, right? Which is just like, look, if you're not doing well in game one, or say you won game one, actually, I don't think you should. It's really just game one. If in
Yeah, it's
game
really
one,
just game one.
if in game one you're up against one of these decks and it's taken a while, and you know it'll take a while, and you're not doing well, the sooner you scoop, the more time you'll have for game two and game three.
If
Otherwise,
you if you don't have a win condition, right? Think about your turns ahead while your opponent is playing. Like if you're like, okay, if I'm thinking about the prize trade, right? And my only win condition is, they get a double prize penalty. like maybe you should just scoop it up and go to the next game. And so that's the biggest piece of advice that I think I can give to people. That's something that I'm going to be thinking about, something that, commentators are probably going to be talking about. Remember that the NAIC stream, I think it's going to be a full art Iono that they're going to be giving on
oh,
PTCG Live. I
so
think with
long
a
as it's
specific
not
code.
bugged, that's great.
Yeah, as long as it's not, well, I think even if it is bugged,
I mean, you still
but
have it. You might not be able
yeah,
to play it, but
you
you have
have
it.
it. So
Yeah.
a little bit of bling for your NAIC decks, and who knows, maybe I'll be on there. I'll just say it right now. I'm gonna be playing Lost Zone Gudra. Um,
Oh, Jake.
Not because I think it's the best deck, but because I really like Gudra. And Lost Zone, I mean, I tweeted about it. I've been enjoying Lost Zone decks. I don't know, something about flower selecting is just really fun.
Yeah.
Flower selecting and the switch flower selecting, and so this is the Jake is canceled podcast episode for saying that they like Lost Box decks, but I don't know. Also think about in Lost Box decks if they're playing the baby Zamazenta. I didn't mention it earlier,
Mm.
but it's very interesting because Zamazenta hits for 220. And so it's really interesting as I've been playing these games online, how many Pokemon actually have 220 in
Mm.
comparison to like Gudra's 200, right?
Yeah.
So just be looking at that. See if they're playing any metal energies in their lost box lists, because there may be a Zamazenta on the way. So, but Sean, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up this podcast?
I think we just wanted to touch briefly
Oh yeah,
on
that's right.
the work that Andrew Mahone, led for
So
raising funds.
so you know, if you're not super prevalent as I am, or prevalent's not the right word, addicted maybe to like Twitter or something, the Pokemon TCG community, you're not super active in the Pokemon TCG community, you may have missed. So Andrew Mahone, the owner and content creator at Tricky Gym, um, did a charity stream the other day on June 25th, I think it was, on Sunday. And they were raising money for the Trevor Project, which is a organization that is huge for LGBTQ youth, transgender youth. And they raised over $10,000. So huge shout out to them in being an ally. Huge shout out to them. I know they had so much cool stuff. They had so many cool guests on there. Like Natalie Miller stole the show at the beginning because Natalie played Darkrai, and absolutely just washed Andrew off the table with the Darkrai list. Natalie was cooking. And it was super super cool to watch. They did a ton of great things on there, and they sold these really awesome custom Dragon Shield sleeves. Dragon Shield hooked them up with like uh pride sleeves and things like that, like transgender sleeves, and it was super super cool. And it's just one of those things that I just wanted to give a little shout out to because it's a community that we gotta support, in my opinion. So,
Yes, fully
anyways,
agree.
Sean, is that all?
I think that's all. Jake, good luck at NAIC this weekend. Have fun, first and
Thanks.
foremost. And yeah, all the listeners out there, if you see Jake, say hi, get a Rowlet. He's got a bunch of
I've,
Rowlet cards.
I've got my Pokemon Center appointment at NAIC for Saturday, so I have already assumed that I won't make day two.
You know what, Jake? Self-awareness is a very important trait to have. So,
Hey, I'm just trying to have fun.
yeah, that's right. But Jake, sign us out.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. We'll see you next week. Everything will hopefully be back to normal. I'll be back home, and we'll talk about all the good times and what happened at NAIC and what's going on in the future. So stay tuned.